Good evening, everybody. It's October 1st at 6 o'clock p.m. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Somerville Planning Board. I'm Mike Capuano, the chair. With me is Amelia Aboff, Sam Denning, Rob Buchanan, Jahan Habib. And pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatoni's declaration of emergency dated March 15th, 2020, this meeting of the Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation. We will have an audio recording available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. This meeting is being recorded. We have one item on our actual agenda that has filed a request for a continuance to the October 15th meeting, and that is Planning Board case MPSP number 2020-0002, which is a public hearing that has previously been opened and heard several times. So the chair moves to continue that agenda item to the October 15th, 2020 meeting, seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. Chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
I abstain from this vote.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
4 votes in support, 1 abstention. This matter is continued to October 15th. We have just other business that is before the planning board this evening, and these are proposed map changes to our zoning map. And I'm going to open up a cheat sheet for me for the agenda items themselves, just so folks are aware. This was previously opened by a joint hearing of the Planning Board and Land Use Committee. We took public testimony. We have received written testimony in response to certain of these proposed changes. And just for the record, the proposed changes are as follows with agenda items. 210185, proposal to change 56 Murdoch Street from neighborhood residence to the urban residence district. Agenda item 210364, proposal to change the zoning district for 6 parcels in Gilman Square. Those parcels are as follows: 345 Medford Street, 350 Medford Street, 360 Medford Street, 91 Marshall Street, 255 Pearl Street, and a final parcel on Medford Street that does not have an associated address. Agenda item 210452, proposal to change 34 and 36 Merriam Street from neighborhood residence to the urban residence district. Agenda item 210472, proposal to change the zoning district for 8 properties between 368 and 414 McGrath Highway. Agenda item 210597, proposal to make an amendment to the zoning ordinance to the standards of subsection 9.2.4.d for cannabis retail sales uses. What I'd like to do is ask staff very quickly. It's my understanding that one of these agenda items is still under debate and may be amended by the Land Use Committee, so that it may be beneficial for the planning board to hold off on consideration of, is it the McGrath Highway project, Rebecca, or what?
Yes, this is Rebecca speaking. Yes, Mr. Chair, that is item number 210472, which was kept in committee by the Land Use Committee and may still have some work being done on it.
Okay. It's the discretion of the chair to take agenda items out of order at my discretion, by the way. I've taken that one out of order, and because it is currently before the Land Use Committee and maybe subject to amendment and revision, I think it's appropriate for the planning board to continue its discussion on this particular agenda item to a future meeting, which I'm going to say for now is going to be October 15th. I don't see any merit in discussing potential map change that might change between now and then. Before we.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. I apologize
Yes.
for interrupting you. It seems like we may have lost Sam. Let me just see for a
No,
moment.
I'm here.
Okay,
He's
we
here.
just lost our audio.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank
That's
you.
okay. So I would propose that we continue discussion of that particular agenda item, which are the parcels on McGrath Highway, to a future date, which I think the next scheduled meeting we have is October 15th. Does anybody have any opposition to continuing that before I make a motion? Okay, the chair moves to continue the agenda item, which is 210472, to the October 15th meeting of the planning board. And the clerk seconds that motion. So a roll call vote, please. The chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Thank you all very much. That agenda item is continued. Now, Rebecca, I don't believe I've been listed as an organizer for this meeting, but that's okay. It was my understanding that Alderman Klingon was considering making on the Gilman Square project. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. I have two quick updates for you. I have been in contact with Councillor Klingon, who is on his way and will advise me when he joins. I also have another update, which is that the project on Merriam Street, I'm advised that the
Yes.
project on Merriam Street was also kept in committee.
I did just see that just now. So here's what I'd like to do then. I would like to hold off discussion on the Gilman Square parcels until Alderman Klingon has an opportunity to join us so that he can provide his testimony. And we're taking that not as public testimony, but as testimony as a public official. We're not reopening public testimony. That is the case that the Merriam Street parcels are also in committee and may change between now and when the planning board might consider it. I think it's appropriate then for the planning board to continue any discussion on that particular agenda item as we just did on the McGrath Highway parcels. So the chair will move to continue discussion on agenda item, hold please, 210452 to the October 15th meeting. Seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. Chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Thank you all. We have a unanimous vote, and that agenda item is continued to October 15th. We have, I'm going to take up agenda item 210185, which is Murdoch Street, one parcel on Murdoch Street, who's requested to be changed from neighborhood residence to urban residence. I'd like to take a discussion on that item. As I recall, this was one that Alderman Niedergang sponsored on behalf of the property owner, and explained that this was one that would fit in congruously with adjacent parcels, that it was one that really should have been changed when we looked at the zoning at the end of last year, and for whatever reason was missed. So I would be in support of recommending to the council a approval of this map change. So I'd like to hear any other discussion from members of the board if you have any thoughts on this particular proposed map change.
Mr. Chair, I agree completely. It seemed like a very reasonable request and appropriate given the context.
Thank you, I agree. So with no further discussion from members of the planning board, going once, going twice, the chair will move to have the planning board recommend adoption of this proposed map change, which is agenda item 210185, seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. Chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
And the planning board has unanimously recommended adoption or recommended approval of this map change to the Board of Aldermen. Next on the list, well, we've canceled that one, we've crossed that one. The only other one, cannabis then, Rebecca?
Mr. Chair, yes, this is Rebecca speaking. We have the Gilman Square changes.
That's right. Before we have Jesse Klingon come.
Yes, we have the Gilman Square, and Jesse is currently here. Councillor Klingon is now here. And then we would have the cannabis one would be the last one.
Okay. Since Jesse Klingon is currently here, what I'd like to do is take up agenda item number 210364, which are several parcels that I've previously read into the record that exist in Gilman Square. I would like to invite Councilor Klingon to address the planning board. As a reminder to those who are in attendance, this is not a reopening of public testimony. This is the testimony of a public official, which the planning board takes regularly outside of public testimony. So I would like to invite Councilor Klingon to address the planning board on these proposed map changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's Rebecca speaking again. I will unmute Councillor Klingon, and I will just note that after he's finished, Sarah Lewis, Director Lewis, will be here, is in attendance, and can give some updates on work that was done in the Land Use Committee recently on this proposal. Councillor Klingon, you're able to speak.
Thank you, board. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, I wasn't able to weigh in obviously last time with the joint meeting due to quorum issues. I do want to lend my my support to this map change. As Ms. Cooper said, that you will hear of some changes to the Ward 3 side, but as far as my side goes, I just want to make one thing clear to everybody. I know some of the constituents came and they mentioned like, this project, that project. I want to be real clear from my perspective as the ward councilor when it came to the zoning and the map changes. I had every intention of making my side 6 stories, MR6. It was due to a sort of a miscalculation, miscommunication by, I worked with the community who wanted to keep it MR4 with the hopes that there would be this overlay district applied already. And since we've run into issues with, with the timing on that, I think it's, in my opinion, it's appropriate as it would have been my wish originally to make it 6 stories, that I have absolutely no issue with this. And I think the community had put forth that petition specifically to correct, what we had worked through during the process of approving the zoning. And so, at the community's will, at the councilor's will, I would ask that you approve the Ward 4 side. As again, you will get more information as to the amendments that the Ward 3 council has made. But on my side, as far as the Medford Street side in Ward 4, which would include 345 Medford and the corner, the ABJ line would be. I would ask that you would approve that they be map change to MR6. And that's as pretty much as clean and straightforward as I can make it. As the ward counselor, I hope you will consider these changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Jesse Clan. It was an unfortunate circumstance based on procedure that you weren't able to provide your comments individually and on behalf of the ward last time. So I'm glad we were able to hear from you tonight.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
if I could just add, I'm sorry, if I could just add another comment or two, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just,
No, go for
it had come back to me the night of testimony, all the different points that I was hoping to make. One of the points being from one of the abutters, as far as the historical building, I will tell you straightforward that, this process was a 5-year process, and it was very long, the zoning process. And, there was many times for abutters to weigh in on, just in general map changes. And I will tell you straight out that particular property owners, obviously had wished that they weren't fabrication. So I think that that's where some of the hoopla comes from. But I will also say that particular building is actually closer to 5 stories. And then furthermore, the last thing I will say is that, it was the city's will to have essentially the urban wall, which would be, building to building with no setbacks. And then, but there was pushback, so Dan changed it to the 10-foot. And then lastly, to me, 6 stories makes absolute sense in this area based on the topography, where you have the elderly building, the Ward 1 elderly building, which is pretty much sky high up on the thing there, and as well as the high school, the new high school, and the new train station, and just the way that the topography goes. I think it makes total sense. It would not be out of place, and this is a transit node. So again, I don't need to beat a dead horse, but I really just hope that that everybody kind of sees that this was the community's will and my will, and just about everybody else's will to make this MR6. So thank you. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Councilor. I appreciate everything that you had to say. That was the sense that I got from the testimony by and large from last time, as well as the fact and staff can correct me if I'm misstating, my understanding of Gilman Square was part of the reason that it was originally zoned in our overhaul to where they sit now was because the neighborhood was expecting that there was potentially going to be an overlay district with certain agreements that have not yet come to fruition, so that in spite of the fact that those have not yet happened, the neighborhood seemed pretty much, particularly when it's brought by neighbors, which is not something that we see terribly often with map changes. That they did say we want to move forward. This is what it should have been. We were kind of holding back until we came to future agreements that in overlays that have not yet been finalized. So I think it follows that the original intent of what this should have been is to adopt this map change. I cannot speak to the intent of other particular property owners, but I think this does make sense. It seems to follow what the eventual intent of this area was. It was brought by at least 15 voters in the city, which a kind of citizen-led map change. It's really not something that we see. Usually, when you see 15 or more voters in the city trying to speak on a map change, it's trying to make the project smaller and not larger. So that kind of spoke to me as to like an appropriate recommendation by this board to the council would be to approve this map change.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, this is Sarah Lewis, Director of
Yes, now,
Planning.
please.
I would like to, so I was participating in I was at the Land Use Committee meeting on Tuesday of this week when they took up the discussion of this particular map amendment. And as Councillor Clingan had referenced, there were some changes. So what you see in front of you at the moment is the current zoning from the map as adopted back in last December. So this was the position where it was the holding point until we could get to the overlay. Rebecca, if you could change the slide. Thank you. So these are the sites that were part of the citizens' proposal to change to MR6. Those were selected. So as Councillor Clingan referenced, the FAB building, which is the Historic Knights of Malta building, that side of Medford Street is the Ward 4. And so those are the two that here comfortable zoning MR6. When the discussion happened on Tuesday, the south part of Medford Street is actually in Ward 3. And Councillor Ewan Campen desired to take those out of the amendment to make sure that there is some community process and a deeper look at sort of the neighborhood in general. So the one parcel on the corner is the mobile gas station, and they've proposed that remain the MR4 as the original zoning map showed. And the Homans building site, as that is city owned, be zoned to civic until a more comprehensive review can be taken of the area.
Sarah, thank you very much for clarifying where we are today. It seems to me like this is working in the process that we should have, which is we're reviewing a neighborhood and a square. That we take it step by step, and it looks like that's what the council is doing, or is suggesting that we recommend that they do. I do see Jesse Clingan has a raised hand. I don't know if the council needs to or wants to address board again on procedure, if it's just a raised hand.
No, Mr. Chair, thank you for recognizing me. Before you all discuss it and make your decisions, and I know that all of your members have questions and concerns for planning staff or amongst each other, but I do want to say that the proposed amendment passed with the community support as well as mine. I think this makes sense. The community has also, Councilor Ewan Campen and myself have worked with the community to make sure that everybody is on board with this, and essentially in terms of a longer term strategy, this makes sense. So we just want to make it clear that I myself and as far as well as the community supports, as well as the Ward 1 councilor and obviously the entire council supports this amendment. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you all for your consideration, and I yield.
Thank you, Councilor. I just want to clarify the slide that we have up now, which shows that the Homans building and the gas station next door that are civic and MR4, and two properties that are now zoned MR6. That is what the planning board is recommending or considering for recommendation tonight. That is the most updated version of that agenda item.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. I'm gonna, unfortunately, I need to pause us just a bit. I would like to ask Director Lewis to address your question, but also I'm advised that we briefly lost Vice Chair Aboff for a few minutes. So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind, please going back and giving a quick recap on the process again.
Is she back, or should we recess?
I believe
I'm here, and I I cut out right after we flipped to the slide of the new proposed zoning. So if Sarah wouldn't mind just repeating her explanation from the point we switched to the second slide, I would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, through the chair, no worries. What the amendment, wow, that's cumbersome, is proposed to be that the mobile station that is on the corner of Medford and School Street remain as the MR4, as the original map had shown. And then the Homan site, which is owned by the city, be zoned a civic use. This giving us time to weigh what the larger neighborhood options could possibly be, the uses for the Homan site, and start to look at the neighborhood as a whole, rather than zone those two properties MR6 and potentially either limit or be too advanced for what those sites need to be as far as the bigger picture goes.
Thank you.
Would you like me to say what I said again, or?
I do think that Sarah has summarized where we are at this point in the meeting. Jessica, thank you.
Okay.
No, I appreciate that, and I'm sorry that we lost Amelia briefly with kind of virtual meetings. Technology is always come and go. So I've certainly had my issues in the past. So all right, so the planning board is currently looking at the map that we're looking at now, and so I will just repeat what I said before. I think particularly with the city council's amendment, that this makes it even more appropriate for the planning board to recommend approval of this map change, because what it does is it allows the community process to continue as we continue looking at the most appropriate zoning characteristics of Gilman Square. So I'd like to hear from my colleagues if you've got further thoughts. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I just have one. So I think this makes complete sense. The proposal that's before us for the 1, 2, 3, 4, if I'm counting correctly, MR6 parcels, the civic parcel, and then leaving the one that's currently zoned MR4 alone, which I think is what is before us. Is that correct? Am I characterizing the what's before?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. I just have one question on an adjacent parcel, I guess. It doesn't affect how I plan to vote, but kitty corner from the MR6 ABJ Auto lot is a lot that is on this map appears to be MR4, but as best as I know, it appears to be a public park. Is that, well, I guess maybe is that true? And secondly, are there other properties in the city that are owned by the city that, like the Homans building, did not get swept up in this civic designation that should be, or what do you have thoughts on that?
Through the chair, I can't speak to necessarily the other sites across the city. The area that you're referring to is currently a smallish open space with a set of stairs in it, because there is considerable grade change across the site. One of the things that, as we look at this area, that will be taken into part of the thinking of the Planning and Zoning Division as we look at this, because obviously one of the things that we've been saying internally is we need to bring the square back to Gilman Square. So we're, from an urban design perspective, thinking about the open space is a key element. The other thing, just to give you a little background on that has been underway, the intersection of Medford Street and Pearl Street, there's a streetscape that the mobility team has been leading. So understanding what the vehicular movements and bicycle and pedestrian, obviously, movements go through that area. So there's going to be a public meeting to look at, to sort of show that work next, the 7th. So I think that's Tuesday, perhaps. And so that work will be part of what's incorporated into our look at the implementation of the neighborhood plan, given that there have been changes along the way.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's helpful.
Mr. Chair? Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Sarah, were you
Yep.
thinking?
No, I was actually just going to mention that just to make things a little more complicated, that MR4 site is actually in Ward 1.
Have any members of the planning board, other than Rob and myself, want to ask questions, have any comments? You don't have to, but this is obviously open.
Mr. Chair, I will. I'd just like to share. I came into tonight's meeting with a lot of uncertainty and about this proposal, and I was not. I'm not particularly comfortable with the process that I believe has been put forward, and the comments from Sarah and from the councilman have been helpful in clarifying that. But I think that there is, as much as I am very heartened to see a citizen-led proposal come through and to see the request for an increase in density, things I'm completely in favor of, I do think there's something to be said for a change of zoning for multiple parcels that's requested out of the cycle of a neighborhood planning process. And I understand that these conversations were happening in another iteration, and there was this intention for an overlay district, but it sounds like the overlay district was intended to come along with community benefits, as have been called out, that presumably would have been in conjunction with that higher density. And in effect, what I feel as though we might be doing is approving that higher density without requiring the community benefits that were envisioned at the time that that higher density was signed off on or conceptually approved by the community organizations and by the city. So I'm leaning really heavily on city staff here to represent that being proposed is in fact sensible from an overall neighborhood planning process, because we're not looking at the abutting parcels. I don't know enough about what that proposal would have entailed to know how the parcels that are immediately adjacent to and outside those that are being proposed in this amendment would be affected by it, and if there would have been other sort of related changes to the zoning that we would be talking about. So I would appreciate clarification and assurance from whoever on the planning staff side about our confidence that this is the right approach and doesn't have consequences elsewhere in the neighborhood that we would regret not having gone through a more fulsome planning process.
So before I kick it over to staff to respond, I just want to remind the board that we are not adopting these changes. We don't have the statutory authority to make these changes. This is a recommendation to the city council, who will then take into consideration our recommendation. So what I think what you're saying, and I think the planning board may want to adopt it in its recommendation is that the council, in considering this amendment, also consider some of the concerns that you've raised. I think that's absolutely appropriate.
I don't feel negatively about the outcome that's being proposed. I'm absolutely in favor of it. I just want to make sure there aren't other things that in a different type of process would have been done in conjunction that we are skipping somehow through this process, which I understand now has been iterative and collaborative through the land use committee. But I would appreciate the consideration of just making sure that we are looking at the whole picture, even while trying to respond to the changes specific to the parcels in this proposal.
Through the chair, this is Sarah Lewis, if I may. From an urban design standpoint, we're pretty comfortable with the MR6. As Councillor Klingon had said, there was always an intent for this area to be slightly taller and more dense because of its proximity to the T station. There are some things that we're looking at and talking about that will incorporate the historic buildings more effectively, and as there is a sort of a higher rise building already in the area, and so how that incorporates to allow for the more transit oriented density. We're comfortable with the MR6. As I'd mentioned, what we're not sure of is if that is, given the grade change, if having the home and site MR6, if that is actually limiting, rather than, sort of could it be even taller, depending on what the use is and what the urban design is for that area. And that involves shadow studies and all sorts of, sort of directional elements, even to some degree wind studies, because we don't want to create tunnel effect. So we're comfortable with the way this is going, and excited to sort of get in and look at how we implement the neighborhood plan.
Are we comfortable that there aren't parcels outside the bounds of the ones that were originally put forward in this amendment that should be included? Or is the idea that we would go through a similar process with the a community-led rezoning again if, say, the next two parcels over also were felt like they should be MR6?
Through the chair, once we
I can speak to that.
honestly, possibly, until we get to an overlay, it is difficult to determine. For example, there are a lot lower scale, what's already zoned MR4 at the intersection are often lower scale, currently lower scale buildings. And so being able to understand what that looks like, I think has more impact at that intersection more than it does further into the square and across from the home and site. But ultimately there may be more density.
Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, I could actually speak to that if you'd allow me. So yeah, so when we did the zoning overhaul, everything was, we went through every single parcel, and I can tell you that there was a step down process. So like, up until School Street would have been MR4, and then further down Pearl, like there was some thought behind all of that. So if we decide in the future as a community to make other parcels, like to make it more dense, fine. But my point being that my intention was for the parcels that have been included to be MR6. And as Ms. Lewis said, perhaps the other council on the other side or whatever may want more density, but it was always my intention to make the parcels that are now being considered to be MR6, and no other further parcels on each side at this time.
Thank you. Just for clarification to my colleagues, I am in favor of this as it stands, and would just ask that I would love to see more density here. I just want to make sure we're doing things in a way that is responsive to the significant amount of thought and community engagement that I think has gone into discussion about this neighborhood. Thank you.
Through the chair, if I might, we can, as you had mentioned, I do believe that it's important to capture Ms. Aboff's statements, and so we can incorporate that in the recommendation letter as well.
I would appreciate that. I think that would, I'm in support of the concerns that she's raised. I think the planning board would do well in formally communicating those thoughts and those concerns to the council. So has anyone else got anything to say on this agenda item before I move to approve a recommendation as we've discussed? Seeing none, the chair will move to recommend this map change agenda as amended by the council and as qualified by Ms. Aboff for recommendation for approval by the council. So seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye. Rob votes aye.
Wonderful. We have a unanimous recommendation. And I think he is still in attendance. I want to thank Councilor Klingon for his insight and his words this evening.
Thank you all for your consideration, Ms. Abra. Thank you for those thoughtful comments, and I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank you for leading.
Thank you, Jesse. Good night. We have one item left on our agenda, and it is agenda item 210597, proposal to make an amendment to the zoning ordinance at standards of subsection 9.2.4.b for cannabis retail sales uses. This was not an agenda item that was on the planning board's agenda during the joint hearing until the very last minute. So what I'd like is for staff to give a brief overview once again what this is. It's my recollection that this is a ministerial change that was an oversight in drafting.
Chair, this is Sarah Lewis. You are absolutely correct. The error came in translating between the previous format of the cannabis ordinance to the new format of the zoning ordinance. This involves the word pre-primary. And so in relation to marijuana establishments, distance to schools and institutional facilities. So the intent was, as the council had first drafted the cannabis ordinance, at that point it was strictly medical, and then obviously since has been amended to be also adult use, that keeping the distance from schools was the most important part of this. The incorporation of the word pre-primary has the unfortunate incident of including daycare facilities and other smaller businesses that are not in the true educational or institutional type of use, and then has an inadvertent effect to limiting the location of some of these facilities that would otherwise be made. And the concern is, as those businesses often are more flexible in their locations than a school or institution would be, it basically harms the potential selection of sites for these new businesses to begin. And we actually have, this didn't come to our attention until our first economic empowerment applicant has been going through the process and raised this as an issue. And as soon as we saw it, we definitely want to make this correction.
Okay, so just so I understand, we were accidentally over-inclusive, and in the choice of wording that was used, we have limited the potential sites for legal adult use shops, and that is in fact harming one of our economic development potential candidates for opening.
That is correct.
Okay, and if we remove this, this doesn't change the intent of how we had meant for our zoning for cannabis retail sales to be located. Is that right?
That's also correct.
Okay. I think that makes sense. I hate when I see something that's drafted and comes up with a reality that the intent didn't mean to happen. So particularly where you say that there is an actual applicant that is being particularly harmed by something that is not their fault, that is the fault of erroneous drafting. So I don't see any reason why this board wouldn't recommend this ministerial change to make sure that the zoning actually works the way it's intended to work. Has anybody got any comments or questions on this agenda item?
Mr. Chair, I had one question. I think that I'm reading this revised ordinance correctly, but just want to make sure. This changes the restriction for both retail marijuana establishments and medical marijuana establishments, should there be any remaining that are exclusively under a medical license. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I just think we should be putting those on equal footing, so I'm glad we are. Thank you.
Has anyone else got anything to say on this particular agenda item? No? And in that case, the chair votes to recommend the planning board send its recommendation for approval to the city council on agenda item number 210597. Excuse me, second by the clerk. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Thank you all very much. It is a unanimous vote. Those are all of the agenda items and items under other business that exists on the planning board's agenda tonight. Has anybody else got anything that they would like to add for the good of the meeting? I want to thank everybody for their attendance tonight. Our next regularly scheduled meeting, I believe, is the 15th. Is that? Yep, 2 weeks from today. So I hope to see you all there, and I thank you all for your time tonight. Chair moves to adjourn, seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Aye.
Thank you and have a good night.